Hello and welcome to the new video. If this is your first time here, my name is Hannah and today I will be talking about my favorite fantasy books of 2024. So I have already talked and posted a video about my favorite horror books, my favorite thriller books, but because fantasy is also a genre that I read, although maybe not as much as horror and thriller, I wanted to pick my favorite books from that genre as well. I have 7 fantasy books here that I want to talk about, and also on top of that I have another 2 books that are super special to me and I want to talk about them as well, but they don't necessarily fit the fantasy genre. One of them maybe, the other one completely not, but because I haven't got any other genres to talk about, I will talk about them together with my fantasy books. So these books will not be coming in any particular order, but I will leave my top 2 books of the year to the very last. So hopefully I'll see you at the end of this video for my top 2 favorite books of 2024. So I'm going to start with the book that actually started my interest in fantasy. Before reading this book, I have never read fantasy. I wasn't interested. I never got on a Harry Potter trend or anything like that. And fantasy was just something, you know, I felt like I was too grown up to read fantasy, right? And then I had an Audible credit and I didn't have any plans on how to spend it. And people around that time, people were starting to talk a lot about this book. So I was like, I'll use my credit on that book and I'll see what this hype is about. And after listening to a few chapters of this book, I went on Amazon and I ordered my own copy. And now I am a fan, and I'm a fan of fantasy. And the book that I'm talking about is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And also, if you are watching this video, this is my top fantasy books of 2024. I am assuming that you already read fantasy. So if you read fantasy, you know what this book is about. So I'm not going to give a synopsis, except maybe let me just mention, because there might be a few people that don't know about this book. Maybe they lived under the rock, I don't know, but maybe there will be few people that don't know about this book. So this is a book about this girl, Violet, that on her, I don't know, 15th, 16th birthday, whatever, she is joining this college. And there's different factions in the college, and her mother is the main general of the college, and Violet wants to join in as a scribe, but her mother forces her to join as a dragon rider. This is the most prominent and the most kind of like important faction in the school. So she needs to go through a series of trials to become a part of this group, and you know, then she starts her training, and a lot of the times is life and death. And as you can imagine, there's different things happening in the books, different challenges, adventures, there's a love interest as well. So it's all like, but the fun thing is the dragons and how the dragons choose the riders. That was the fun thing, and it's something that I haven't seen before. Well, maybe except in Avatar, when those flying things, I don't know what they were called, they were choosing to accept the rider or not. So this is the closest thing I can compare it to. But yeah, so this is all I'm gonna say. You probably know what this book is about and you don't need me explaining more. So for me, this book is such an important book because this is what kind of started my interest in fantasy. And as soon as Iron Flame came out, I was on the ball, and I was I think, I can't remember if I part read, part listened Iron Flame, but nothing beats Fourth Wing for me, because this is what started my love for fantasy, and this is why this book is one of my favorite books of 2024, because what it started for me. I feel like this book had opened an entire new world for me to explore, and I couldn't be happier. The two books I have to mention here in this moment, even though I haven't got physical copies, I've read them physically, but my daughter has my physical books. So I'm just going to show them on the screen, but I'm sure that you will know what books I'm talking about. I'm talking about Sarah J. Maas, and my favorite books in the series is A Code of Thorns and Roses and A Code of Mist and Fury. Again, I don't think I have to talk about these books. We all know it's the famous or infamous love triangle, Farah, Tamlin and Rhysand. And I feel like book one was a very good introduction to the world, to the magic system, to the characters and everything. But the way it had finished and what book two was more about Farah and Rhysand and how the relationship developed and what came, what challenges they met and everything. It just, the book two, it was just absolutely beautiful. And maybe also for me, because I was never a fan of Tamlin, and I thought like Rhysand had so much more character than Tamlin. He's tall, dark, handsome, whatever. And yeah, I just loved book two for that reason, because I think they were made for each other and I was a fan of this couple. But I have to mention book one again, because obviously without book one, we wouldn't have book two. But these two are definitely my two favorite books out of the entire series. The next couple of books I wanted to talk about are by the same author. And it is T.J. Klune, and I have Under the Whispering Door, and I also have The House in the Cerulean Sea. Under the Whispering Door, I actually listened to this book. My library had an audiobook copy that I borrowed, and I loved it so much I went and I purchased my shelf trophy. And in this book we follow Wallace, who is not a very nice person. Unfortunately for him, he dies and his soul doesn't cross over, and he ends up in this in-between place, in a house, in a little tea shop run by Hugo and some other characters and spirits and whatnot. And Hugo promises Wallace that he will help him to cross over, but his soul stays in this tea shop, and he is learning a lot about himself, about other people. And the reason I love this book so much is how Wallace's characters changed and developed throughout the book, throughout the story. We start with this person that's not very nice, and then we end with the person that's being rewarded for all the hard work. So I think it's such an uplifting and heartwarming story. It's definitely one that I'll be recommending. I actually got this book as well for my mum. She's never read fantasy, and now she's a fan like myself. So she's read it and she really enjoyed it as well. And for me, it was also a special book, because not only with this book I discovered T.J. Klune, but also I found another genre that I will enjoy, because this to me is like very cozy, very heartwarming fantasy. And we all need something warm and cozy from time to time. And talking about warm and cozy, this is exactly what I love The House in the Cerulean Sea. In this book we follow Linus Baker, who is kind of like a social worker, I understand. And in the world that they live, they have people that have magic and normal people. And Linus, as a social worker, is being sent to this orphanage run by Arthur, and he's supposed to do like an inspection, see how things are in this orphanage. The children in this orphanage, they all have some sort of abilities. And in the beginning we meet Linus, and he's kind of like this, a tough man, not very nice again. And then we see how he changes and how his character develops throughout the book. And yeah, it's just such a lovely story. Again, cozy, very heartwarming. it's just so good. It's just, I don't know, it's so hard to explain when you haven't read it. It's just, you know, those days when like today outside, it's really cold, it's windy, it's raining, and you know, you come home from work and you know you don't have to do anything much, and you sit down on a sofa, you put the heating on, you cover yourself with a blanket, and you make a nice cup of tea, and you get a book and you start reading. This is how this book made me feel, like cozy and warm, and like I was getting a hug. It was absolutely lovely. So yeah, another top book of 2024 for me. The next book I want to talk about is The Invocations by Krystal Sutherland, and in this book we follow 3 young women whose paths cross by pretty much by accident. So the first one, she is her sister is dead, and she would want to bring her back, so she's looking for magic to bring her back. Then the second one that has some sort of a demon attached to her that is draining her body and hurting her body. And the third one is a witch that provides women with invocations. So it's like a tattoo on your skin that will help to improve, that will give you certain powers, or you know, improve your confidence and stuff like that. And at the same time, women are being murdered, and the invocations that they were given are being cut out from the skin. The 3 of them, I think they all meet in one at the same time at the crime scene. I can't remember exactly. I've read this book a long time ago. Somehow the paths cross, and from that moment they kind of start working together and trying to find this supernatural killer, the person that murders the women. So I really enjoyed this book. I think it was such a fun book to read. I also listened to this. This is my shelf trophy, which I got after listening to the book, and it is on my read again list. I would like to read it physically this time. But yeah, one of my top books of 2024. Really enjoyed the vibe, and I think those 3 women, they're so, I think in general I just like reading books about the strength of a woman and how we can persevere in difficult situations and in challenging times. And I think this is what this book is for me. It's about how we can go past and get through the difficulties that life throws in front of us. So highly recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. I think it's more of a young adult situation here, but regardless of that fact, I had a big fun reading this book. The next book I want to mention here is V. Schwab, The Invisible Life of Addie. This again is a book that I bought for my mum because I really wanted her to read this book. I thought it was fantastic. It was such a good book. In this book we follow Addie, and I think this is happening like, I don't know, 1800s or something like this. That's where we start. And her parents are forcing her to get married, and because she doesn't want to get married and she's trying to escape this marriage, she does some magic in the woods, and she calls up the devil. So she makes the deal with the devil and becomes immortal. And in this book we follow her for about 300 years. We see her in different times, in different situations, and during wars, etc., and then in modern times as well. But the problem is, even though she's immortal, she can't really get to love anyone or anyone to love her, because no one can remember Addie after they slept. So, you know, we might have a fantastic day and go on a date and whatnot. The moment you sleep, you wake up, and it's like waking up with a stranger in your bed. So no one can remember her until one day she meets Henry. I am not going to say any more because I don't want to spoil things. Just believe me, this is such a beautiful book. I think it would bring a tear to your eye as well. Definitely very emotional, very heart-wrenching in places as well. And yeah, one of my favorite books of 2024. It's again a book that I would like to reread at some point. The next book that I wanted to talk about and mention here is The Kingfisher, Nettle and Bone. Nettle and Bone is such a sweet fairy tale. It literally is a fairy tale. And in this book, we have kingdoms and we have kings and queens and princesses and princes. And in one kingdom, we have this family, king and queen, with 3 daughters. And the youngest daughter is being put in a, I think she grows up in a convent or somewhere like this. And the oldest sister is being married off to this prince from the neighboring kingdom just to strengthen the kingdom. And then unfortunately she dies, so the second sister gets married off as well to the same prince. And I think it's during the birth of a child that Mara goes to visit her sister, and what comes to light is the fact that the prince is a very aggressive and a violent man, and Mara has suspicions that it's probably the prince that killed the older sister. So she wants to get rid of this tyrant, and she goes on this mission. I think she finds a witch, and the witch says that she will help her killing the prince if she can complete the 3 impossible tasks. This book was so... It literally read like a fairy tale. It was, you know, you have your 3 sisters, you've got the king, the queen, the bad person, the bad king or the bad prince, and you've got a witch. And I think the funny thing was, I think it was a chicken, or was it a duck? I think it was a chicken. There's a funny chicken in this book, a chicken that is possessed by a demon. So not only this reads or listens to as a fairy tale, it has those fairy tale elements, but it also is funny, and yeah, it just shows the power of conviction and the power of will, and, you know, sisterhood and sisterly love as well. Absolutely loved that book. Another 5-star read from 2024. Now, since I'm keeping my top 2 books for the very last, I am going to mention a book that is not a fantasy, but I have to mention this author because, again, this is an author that I keep returning to, and every single time I want to have a laugh, I'll read his book. And this is not just specifically this book. I think any book you can get your hands on, so I think it will make you laugh. I think also that you will discover a few interesting facts as well. And the author I'm talking about is Bill Bryson. The book I have here is The Road to Little Dribbling, but it doesn't really matter because I feel in general Bill Bryson is one of my favorite authors for that kind of a funny, if I'm looking for a funny story. So this is a non-fiction. You can see how many tabs I have in this book. Basically I tabbed funny bits and I tabbed interesting facts as well in this book. And I don't know, I know Bill Bryson has mixed reviews because of the way he writes. He's also, I feel like a quite an old-fashioned person as well. Also the fact that he lived in Britain for quite a long time. I think his sense of humor is a bit more British now than American. And, you know, it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I have to mention Bill Bryson here because, like I said, Bill Bryson always makes me laugh. I find myself giggling when I read his books. So yeah, definitely recommend Bill Bryson if you want to have a laugh. And that brings me to the last 2 books on my top of 2024 list. I don't know where to start. I think I'm gonna start with fantasy since this is mostly fantasy. And the book that I have discovered, this book has been around for a while, but I think I was just late to the party. But this book made me go and buy a collector's edition. So I have the set, I have a trilogy as a paperback, but now I also own a beautiful special edition that Waterstones released last month. And the book that I'm talking about is The Poppy War by RF Kuang. And OMG, I'm not even like I don't know. I don't know where to start. I freaking loved that book. This book, in this book, we follow Rin. And Rin is an orphan, and she is being fostered by her uncle and auntie. And they are quite poor. They run a shop where they sell opium. They're not very nice people. And they tell Rin that when she comes to age, she will be married to this port inspector, because they're thinking long term. He will let the deliveries come through, and, you know, etc., etc. And Rin says, I think Rin is 14 at that point or something like that. She's very young. She's just a child, a teenager. So Rin doesn't want to get married, and she finds a tutor and says to him, look, I have 2 years to learn. In 2 years, I want to take an exam. There's some very prestigious exam that you can take. And in 2 years, I want to take this exam, and I want to go to school. I want to study. So because her foster parents, they don't really give her time to study or money to study, she gets some help from that tutor, but mostly she prepares for this exam herself. Lo and behold, she passes an exam in 2 years' time, and she wants to go to school. Foster parents say, no, we will not pay for the school. So she has to go to the only school that is free with no fees, and it is a military academy, a very prestigious one. It's the academy that, when you finish, you become a general or someone high up in the army. So she starts this school, and she is being treated as an outsider because of the color of her skin, where she comes from, and who she is. Normally, all these kids, they're like sons and daughters of generals and very prominent people, prime ministers, etc., etc. And she's just a poor girl from the south. So she's being treated like an outsider. She's being bullied, she's being picked on, and then she starts to get tutored by this I can't remember his name, but he basically teaches her how to meditate and how to connect with the gods. And oh my gosh, like, I have never, apart from, I think the closest thing to the Poppy War to me was the Iron Flame, and was the Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, where you had a little bit of battles going on and whatnot. But this, maybe not book 1 as much, but going further in the series, book 2, book 3 I haven't read yet, but very military and very political, especially book 2. And I have never thought myself of being able to enjoy that style of fantasy. So I just love this book, and I wish I knew about this much earlier, and I read it when it was all, there was so much hype around this book. I recommend this to everyone. This is my top fantasy book of 2024. I have one more book to read in a series, and then I'll be done. And then also, I have that beautiful special edition, collector's edition copy on my bookshelf, and I just wish more books, the other 2 books will come out as a collector's editions as well, because this is definitely something to cherish and something to keep on my bookshelves forever. And the last but not least, my other top book from 2024, maybe you can call it a little bit, it's got a little bit of a fantasy element, but it's more of a sci-fi, I would say. And the book that I'm talking about is Project Hail Mary. Obviously, I feel like it's been on so many lists, top of the 2024 lists, that you're probably not even surprised to see this book here. Project Hail Mary, it's a book set in space. We follow Ryland, and one day he wakes up and he finds himself on this spaceship, and the 2 capsules next to him where he was, turns out the people are unfortunately passed away in their cryosleep. The problem is he doesn't remember anything. He doesn't know where he is, where he's going, Why is he going? And he needs to put all the puzzle pieces together and, you know, come up with an answer and with a solution. I can't say too much in case you haven't read it, but I don't know, I just love this book. This book was so funny. It was the funniest thing I've read last year. This even topped Bill Bryson, okay? That's how funny it was to me. And especially, I think, if you can listen to a Project Hail Mary as an audiobook, I always recommend audiobook to people as well, because the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. You will not regret spending your credit on a Project Hail Mary. This book was so funny, it was entertaining, it was fast-paced, and it was also quite scientific, which I actually really, really like in books, when you have a little bit of like pop science, like a little bit of physics, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I enjoy this sort of little facts in the books. So yeah, so that's it. These are my top books of 2024, with these two taking the very, very top of the list. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to leave thumbs up if you did, and also let me know in the comments whether you've read any of these books and what were your thoughts on them. And if you want to see my other top books of 2024, you should be seeing a video on the screen right now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!